Good morning. If you can hear me in the back, can you raise your hand, please? Thank you. Good morning. Could we all have a seat, please? Thank you all. Sounds like a lot of energy on early in the year. That's wonderful to see. Thank you very much. We'll call to order. It is what, 9:05 a.m.?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Happy New Year, everyone. We all wish you a healthy, happy, successful 2023. Equally, we wish you a happy Martin Luther King Day. We'll save a few of those comments for Commissioner Banks when he comes. He was certainly heavily involved in some of the Martin Luther King Day event weekend. So we'll look forward to a couple of things that he would like to say here. But for those of you who participated either there or part of the planning or in spirit, we appreciate that also. And then lastly, if you don't mind, as we get the call to order, let's do roll call first, and then we'll do the pledge and move forward.
Commissioner Ashworth.
Here.
Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Hassler.
Here.
And Commissioner Schwerin.
Here.
Would you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. While it is a new start to a new year, we do believe that it is important for us to again recognize the loss within this department of one of our officers late last year. So if we could have a moment of silence for Officer Rob Woods, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much for each and every one of you who was involved either directly in the funeral or through your hearts and prayers and everything else that go along with it. We are so appreciative. I happen to know that family personally through the father, and I cannot share with you how grateful he, his wife, and their family were for all that you all did for him. It's remarkable how you come around a family, and they were very impressed, deeply touched. So thank you for making it such a special occasion for such a terrible situation. So thank you all very much. With that, Chief, unless you have anything else before we get started, we're going to get a new officer sworn in. Yes?
Sure.
Very good. If you'll come up here. We're going to ask you to raise. Come on up. Yes. Don't bite. She does, I don't. You'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States, that I will support the Constitution, the laws of the United States, the state of Missouri, and the charter and ordinances of St. Louis County, that I possess all the qualifications for employment as an officer for St. Louis County, that I will faithfully demean myself as a police officer of the St. Louis County Police. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you. Anything I need to do? Make sure you understand that in context of where we are. This is your deputization authority. As a deputized officer of St. Louis County, you are restricted to the protection of persons and property at Lambert St. Louis International Airport. Thanks for protecting all of us when we go out there. So great to have you. Thank you. All right, I believe we have some awards to give out, some service awards and then some other awards. Yes? Very good. So if you would, when your name is called, if you would come down, our first order of business is going to be some service awards. This is a way we say thank you for your years of service, not only to this department, but more importantly to the citizens of our community. So we'll call your name, we'll bring you down. we'll present you with your pin. We'll get your picture taken with the chief and whomever else will acknowledge your family and we'll move on. That's all right? Yes? And the board would like to thank each and every one of you for your service to all of us. Thank you very much. First, from the Division of Special Operations, Sergeant Patrick Hokamp. He is with us for 20 years and is currently crisis intervention team.
Sergeant family with you? No, sir, not today. Not today. Just take you then.
Also with 20 years in the crime scene unit, Police Officer Christine Romo. "20 years? I was just a kid 20 years ago."
Think you want to know about?
No.
Probably Captain Romo. Thanks for being here.
With 15 years in the office of the Chief of Police, Sergeant David Graff.
Dave, nobody here with you? That's your family.
Yeah. Also with 15 years from the Division of Criminal Investigation, Melody Quinn, Police Officer.
You know what I do every year? I mean, every so often, look at that Christmas video you did.
Thanks, Vera.
With 10 years of service from the Division of Patrol, Police Officer Joshua Ziegler. Also from the,
No family. Friend?
also from the Division of Patrol with 10 years, Sergeant Donald Schultz. Continue with 10 years from the Division of Criminal Investigation, Ms. Catherine Martin.
Family? Slap family? Sorry, I forgot to ask you, any family friends here with you? Oh, no. Nope.
Also with 10 years of service, Mr. Justin Lance, also from the Division of Criminal Investigation. Louds, forgive me, Louds. Apologies.
Justin, any family friends with you? Just slap family. Just slap family.
Moving to 5 years of service, Police Officer Stephen Digheadler.
No family? 5 years. Well, thank you. That was 13 years, okay?
Sir, I believe you're turning it over to you.
That's it? Thank you. Hey, I just want to reiterate what our chairman said about what happened with us and the loss of our officers this year. You know, we're dealing with an experience that we really never want to get real good. You know what I mean? But the way that we handled that funeral for the Woods family on the past Saturday was outstanding. Done with all of them, but again, nothing really good at, but thank you all for everything that you did. Okay. I have, Chief's commendation for Mr. Michael Wadlow. Police Officer Wadlow, I'm sorry. Congratulations. Take a shot, okay?
What's that?
Sir, Chief,
You?
members of the board.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Chief, members of the board, audience. We're recognizing Officer Wadlow here, reference an incident that took place on September 9th of last year. He received a call for service for a suicidal subject. A little unique about this incident was that the call came in from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. A 15-year-old from that city called our dispatch line, informed our personnel that a 15-year-old here was threatening suicide. Unfortunately, they were unable to give an exact address and only gave a street. There was about 30, 40 houses on this street. And initial attempts to locate this address were unsuccessful, but Officer Wadlow persevered. He did, back to basic investigative work, social media, and was able to find an exact location. Went to the house, knocked on the door, dad answers. He's unaware that his family member, his daughter, is in crisis. They go to her bedroom, find her unconscious next to a bottle of pills. EMS is called. They take her to the hospital. Stomach is pumped. They find upwards of 100,000 milligrams of acetaminophen in her system, 5 times more than the lethal dose. So his actions that day and not giving up and locating this person in crisis reflect greatly upon this department and the dedication that he has to the citizens of St. Louis.
Mike, got anybody here with you, family, friends?
Either, sir.
Neither? Life-saving award for Police Officer Michael Reardon. That?
Morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chief.
Morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Reardon here on September 2nd of last year received a call for a suicidal female at number 22 Merrimack Valley Plaza in the city of Valley Park. Officer Reardon canvassed the area, located the female on the railroad track bridge over the Merrimack River. Tried to engage the female in conversation without success. Female began counting down from 10. Officer Reardon quickly grabbed her from over the safety rail. Struggle ensued, was able to get her back over onto the railroad tracks into a safe position. She was conveyed to the hospital without further incident and was admitted on a 96-hour hold. Officer Reardon unselfishly put his life on the line and to save this female. What a great job. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, family, friends here with you?
Yes, sir.
Come on, stand up. Chairman Boyd, I do have some promotions to make. First up, being promoted from captain to Lieutenant Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Timothy Cunningham. Lieutenant Cunningham's going to take over DCI. Got your office all ready to go now?
Now we do. I'll have to
Now
hang
you
this up.
do.
I think he has some family here, chief.
Lieutenant, got any, Colonel, I'm sorry, got any family here?
Really, sure.
Not really. We know better.
Yeah, you do. Well, so my dad's here. That for the Mike, recently retired from the Missouri State Air Patrol, sir. Even more recent, my brother Pat, former St. Louis County officer for a couple of years, just retired from the FBI about 2 weeks ago. And a lot of the group know Dan, retired sergeant from the county police. A lot of quitters, or maybe I'm the youngest. I'm proud of that. That's 150 years right there. My lovely wife, Sarah.
Stand up, so to speak.
He has to deal with me, so. My oldest daughter, Charlie, 6th grade, very important, so she's there right now. But my twins, Jesse and Josie, stay on up. Thank you.
Next up, being promoted from the captain, Captain Brian Sheldon. We're not sending Brian very far. He's gonna stay right where he is.
Okay.
Since you guys just love the reports that he gives you and, the quizzes that he gets every board meeting, you go leave it right.
I love him as much.
You love him as much. Got any family here?
I do, but can't follow up what just happened. Mother, Denise, and
Stand up.
would dote on them as well, but my wife nudged me as the colonel was talking and said, we're gonna go ahead and keep it at that. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, being promoted to captain, Captain Jeremy Romo. Jeremy, you're going to communication, is that correct? Family, friends, we know at least one, right?
Yeah.
All right.
My boss here,
He
Christine, and then the department family.
doesn't want to stand up. Being promoted to Lieutenant, Lieutenant Sean McGuire. No? Yours. Right. You're going third?
Third person.
All right, lucky you.
Yes.
You ain't got names, all right?
Yes.
Lieutenant, you got any family here?
Yes.
Friends? There's two things. I will do that one. Next up, he's already here. Lieutenant Charlie Rose. There you go. So unfortunately for Charlie, he's staying with me, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Charlie, we know you have family.
I do. As you know, Mama Rodriguez is here, Tony Rodriguez. My brother Orlando and my sister Laura.
Mama Rodriguez makes some of the best burritos on earth.
Yes, she does.
Next up, we have, being promoted to Lieutenant Craig Longworth. He's on my mind. That's right. No, it's all good. It's all good. All right. He would be thrilled that I confused him.
Oh, yeah, he'd be laughing. I'm sure.
Lieutenant, anybody here with you?
My beautiful wife Bobby's here with me today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Being promoted to sergeant, I want to make sure this is a good time for him, okay? Sergeant, that's still okay for you? Good time? Come on up. Sergeant Mike Doherty. Thanks for being here.
I'm still sorry for that.
Sergeant, you got anybody here?
Yes, sir. My lovely wife Amanda, and my mother Mary.
Come on. Y'all been here, you can go back on and get some rest now. Okay? Next up, Sergeant Michael Deck.
Congratulations.
Sergeant, you got any family and friends here with you?
I do. I got my beautiful wife, Michelle.
Stand up, Michelle.
The Business Special Operations family and safety family.
And last but not least, Sergeant Donald Short. Congratulations, Sergeant. Sarge, family, friends here with you? You looking at it? That's it for the promotion, sir.
Thank you. Indeed, we appreciate it. Rabbi Shook, may we invite you and our newest member of your organization up?
Chief?
Made an amazing discovery, Board of Police Commissioners. Today, we found out that there are so many Bryants in this department, and none of them had a chaplain to call their own. So now it's our pleasure to invite Ryan Josephson to be our county
Then I.
chapter. Bryant comes from us from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is our first Mormon department. He joins another 23 or so chaplains serving all of our precincts. I'd like to bring him here. He is a graduate of the University of Utah. He's also a graduate of the State University of New York in Binghamton. And his last employment was with the Rawlings Corporation as the chief financial officer. And no, he does not have baseball tickets.
But I do have my best brother here. No friends.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Commissioner Inchman.
Thank you. I believe we'll move on to your staff and their reports. Yes?
I'm going to just offer those of you who are getting to the business part of the meeting, those of you who don't want to stay for that.
And there goes the room. Ah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Microphone too, right?
A social hour now.
Really nice.
Oh, you know, had to
Take
put,
that off.
had to put on my lawyer, had to put on my lawyer suit. Oh, yeah, it was easy. Just a long line. It took 2 minutes, but I was in line for 15. I thought being early would be, I got there like 10 minutes early and there was like a line, like a ride at Disneyland. And they had pro se people. Good morning, sir. Had to do a little work this morning. Sorry, I was over at the courthouse.
I need to show you the picture.
Uh-oh.
Make sure you can understand.
What we see?
Almost.
Well, you were a trooper, man. You did a great job. Gary thought you did a great job in your acceptance.
Father and
So you were great.
boys, I can't imagine what Mrs. Cunningham went through every night she went to sleep. Imagine that. Having a husband and 4 boys all in the policing profession. Mrs. Cunningham, can you imagine what her nights
I
must
want
have
to see
been?
the video your wife showed.
Or if she ever had them.
How the videotape your wife took, how the video
You
come out.
haven't seen it?
Okay. I know. Ah, my goodness.
Amazing. Mike.
Awesome family. Yeah, the wives of the mothers and children, many.
You have your Richard Banks calendar right there.
Oh, is that what that is?
Oh, yeah, you want to keep that, man. Goes right underneath the grandkids' pictures on the fridge.
You know, it does. Thank you very much. I need serious legal help as opposed to.
Magnet.
I'm too.
Right, don't call me.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sure, thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. All right, chief, shall we reconvene and get moving here?
Mm.
Sorry.
First up, Joyce Hill, budget report.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So it's early in the year to have any kind of real budget information. Oh, it's so loud. 2022, we have
2 years open right now while we're recording expenditures from 2022 as well as the new 2023 expenses. They don't close out the 2022 until the, I can't do this. They don't close out the 2022 books until President's Day weekend. At that time, then we'll know the final numbers for, thank you, Dave. They'll know the final numbers for how much we have spent in 2022. So, and 2023, we really have no real data yet to record. We haven't even had a full pay period yet. So I don't have, very much to offer you except to tell you that next month we'll be able to give a final number for 2022.
Make sure we heard that. So maybe at the February board meeting, certainly by the March board meeting, we'll have a closeout of 2022.
When is the February board meeting?
Well, that we haven't determined yet. That's why.
Yeah, so it would probably most likely be March.
March.
That we'll know more, because after they close everything out.
Very good. And the 2023 budget was in fact finalized?
It was finalized and they did reduce it by about 7 million for, they reduced our salaries and fringes. And, the impact of that, we'll know later in the year. Just depends on how things hit overtime and how our staffing changes.
So maybe just a reminder. So our 2023 budget is built out for the actual number of staff we have now.
Yes.
And that's where the $7 million difference is.
Yes,
Whereas last year it was at full.
Well, we always create the budget based on all of our vacancies being filled, right? So when they cut that $7 million, I'm so annoying. When they cut that $7 million, they took all of our vacancies and made them, I think that's how they came up with that amount.
Joyce, will you pull that? No, just pull the microphone down a little bit, maybe picking up just there. you
There?
go.
Is that better?
Maybe.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, so we build the budget out. That's what we submit as a request. And then the amount that they cut, I'm assuming, was they looked at the positions we had vacant and decided that was the amount they would reduce our appropriation to. So everyone who is currently active employee, we can fund them. It's just if we go hire more than that, we might have an issue. We have too much overtime because we don't have people working. We have to pay overtime. There's a lot of unknowns there. We'll know more as the year progresses.
So something we talked about at our last board meeting was whether they are reducing the number of authorized positions or they're putting them on a freeze. Do we know what they did?
Well, from the budget side, they just simply took the money away. They didn't say anything about our authorized staffing. They just only provided us 167 million instead of the 174 we requested. So what we do with that, I believe, is your call, the chief's call. But right now we have the vacancies that will cover what they cut. It's just a matter of as overtime increases because salaries went up, right? We had a new pay grid. So salaries have gone up, which means overtime will go up if we continue in the same manner we did last year.
So let's say we are able to in the first quarter, and I'm just saying hypothetically, we are able to fill 100% of our authorized spots. We will have a $7 million deficit.
Oh, we'll be in trouble. Yeah.
Well, unless we get that $7 million back, unless we
Yes.
go and ask for authorization
Yes.
for that and we know that number is 7 million.
Yes, that is what they reduced. Like for right now, and when I look at the 2022, we have less than 5 million remaining. But we still have more bills to come in. So that kind of as a general rule tells me our wages are higher, our overtime is going to be higher. So I would assume that we would need to ask for an additional appropriation at some time in the year. And we'll know that more, as time goes by, as we're recording all the expenditures.
Because I think they allowed us to hire about 30 people.
Oh, I believe that if the people come, they'll find, we'll be able to ask them for the money and they'll fund it. But in their, need to to balance the entire county budget, that was where they saw a place, an easy, low-hanging fruit, right? They have all these vacancies, we'll reduce this. And then if they need it, we can ask for it.
I think that the chief's question, if I heard it correctly, it isn't frozen at current levels. It's frozen at a reduction of 75% of our open heads, which still allows us to hire 30-some heads
Yes.
for need. And then,
Word was that if we go above that, all we needed to do was come back to them, ask for more money, as long as we kept hiring people.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding. This is what the council approved and that's how much we have, but it's not, we've always been able to request more if we can justify it.
And we have the room to fill 30 people
Oh,
within
yeah.
our current authorized budget or
Yes.
appropriated budget.
Yes.
And then after that,
Mm-hmm.
just go and ask. Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
let me see.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
Joyce.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Captain Sheldon?
Good morning again.
Good morning. Again, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Sheldon. Sir. Kind of waiting for this to pull up, and we'll get into the numbers. So the package that I sent you last week obviously does the same thing that we've done every month, but if you notice, there's some additional slides that kind of capture the overall year for 2022. All right, so our first tab, always the notable events, which is virtually the Bureau of Professional Standards kind of investigation slide. Citizen complaint incidents, we had 14 as of last month and had none in December, which is a good thing. Our internal investigations down nearly 10% from year-to-date 21. Uses of force were up slightly, 2.4%. So a total of 7 incidents. When we look at the total number of calls for service, which we'll get to later, there was 3,300 and something more calls for service, which it was a 2.5% increase from last year, which falls in line with that number. So still 7 total uses of force more off of 3,500 more calls roughly. Makes it at 0.0002, I believe, percent of those incidents. So it wasn't surprising that that went up just slightly. Vehicle accidents, we had a low month in December. I believe it was 7 total vehicles accidents that we had, which kept that number down, that we were about even, and finished the year at 3% under. And then the largest spike, obviously, in vehicle pursuits. We had a uncanny number of pursuits in December. For a December, we had 9, whereas in December of 21, we had 4. So I know the question is why. A lot of times, so a couple of things on pursuits and just BPS investigations in general. Obviously, I don't have all of the information on specific things because those are confidential and I just don't have access to all that. I can get the numbers. A lot of times on pursuits, it's the right place, right time, and obviously it has to meet our criteria. We have a very conservative policy, especially when it comes to the Division of Patrol. So all of those, the only thing that I can tell you is that all 9 of those being looked at by BPS that happened in the month of December appear on the surface, again, from the data that they were initiated under guise of the general order. So there was no violation, meaning they met our pursuit policy stating that they were felony crimes and rightfully authorized. So again, any more specifics, unfortunately, because of the investigations, I don't have that, but I'll also get with BPS and kind of, as I go through the next month, I'll start trying to break some of these things down, especially like use of force incidents, if you remember right. And I know that we'll start looking at how many of those were physical restraint, and I can tell you that it was probably close to 85% as compared to how many baton strikes we had, taser and things like that. So hopefully next month I'll have those numbers broken down for you.
On the internal investigation incidents, is the number how many are open at during the year? Is it how many, like, at what
Yes.
point does?
How
the
many
year
are
count?
opened January 1 through December 31st?
Okay, so complaints that come in or issues that come in that.
Those are all
BPS
internal.
Internal.
Yep. So i.e., an employee packages evidence in the wrong way, and a supervisor would then write that up into an administrative blue team
Mhm.
and send that up. So that would be an internal investigation that would be open, not coming from an outside citizen.
And we count that number at the moment it hits BPS.
Yes, because BPS, that's how many were initiated throughout the year. I couldn't tell you, again, because I don't have access to it, how many are currently open and how many have been wrapped up.
Question on the vehicle accidents. Those numbers entail everything from a fender bender to the car being totaled out,
Mhm.
right? So I'm wondering if that impacts our fleet, how that impacts our fleet in terms of, obviously, something's easily, if the bumper can be repaired or is the vehicle totaled out, does that have an impact on our fleet?
Oh,
You
for
don't,
sure.
okay.
Well, it absolutely does. Again, numbers that I don't have right off the bat.
Sure.
And get with Colonel Lore, because I know that that's his division that has
Right.
all the vehicles. And, how many of these 163 accidents saw totals, how many were quick repairs. Understand that there's sometimes too that those cars can just remain in service. It's just a fender bender, but obviously may require a police report. Therefore, it's documented. I don't have the specifics on
Okay.
that. And then finally, failure to yields for the year, 2452. 181 of those were in December. So we're over the previous probably 5 months, we had seen 200 plus. We did come down a little bit. Again, December usually shows that. But as I go to the next slide.
Sir, before you move, a couple of comments, couple of questions.
Yeah, you
One,
got it.
thank you for providing a 3-year history here. It allows us to look back, citizen complaints, that's down more than 50% over a 3-year period of time. That's great. You look at the numbers just from year to year, 21 to 22, and with the exception of vehicle pursuits, which you'll come back to us in the use of force, numbers are generally down. Of course, we don't know failure to yield. So all those are positives. Thanks for coming back with the use of force detail.
Yep.
Maybe we had 2 other requests in there from an informational standpoint.
You absolutely may.
On the internal investigations, to Commissioner Schweren's question, can you provide us with a closure rate? How long it takes on average to close an investigation?
I'm sure we can definitely do that.
Provide due diligence to our employees. And on the vehicle accidents, to Commissioner Banks's question, as part of the information you come back with, can you tell us how many cars we physically lost last year due to accidents, right?
Right.
You're non-reparable.
Right.
Obviously, the impact on budgeting and everything else is where I think part of the reason
Mhm.
we would ask the question.
You got it.
There's one last thing, counterintuitive to me, so probably not to you, but our pursuits are up by 50% and our accidents are inherently down flat, but down 3%. That's just more we pursued, but we had less vehicle accidents. It's just interesting statistic in my mind. I don't know about my peers, but is that normal? More pursuits we have, the less accidents we have?
I don't know about normal from year to year because, that it would appear that more pursuits that we had. And that's something as well, when I delve into the actual pursuit numbers, we'll see how many suspect vehicles, we'll call them, were involved in accidents or how many police vehicles. So I'll get all of that for
Thank
you
you.
as well when I look into those numbers.
And we look forward to seeing the failure to yield year over year too, once we get to next year
Absolutely.
this time.
And I'll knock on wood that those numbers continue to stay down as far as accidents compared to vehicle pursuits. So the failure to yields, again, we said is 2452. As noted, 181 in December. 43 of those in the 1st precinct, 44 of those in the 8th precinct, and 42 of those driven by the highway safety unit. That means that of the 181, 72% were from those two precincts in highway safety alone. So nearly 3/4 driven from those 3 units. When we go to patrol data, not a whole lot here. Obviously, December's is always going to be down. The good thing is, like, number of felony arrests, we're only down by about 24 from the previous month. So showing that guys are still out there doing things. We actually had more radio calls in December than we did November directed radio calls, which probably goes to some of those arrest numbers and things of that nature as well. Any questions on that slide?
Oh, but can we ask, again, we're getting in a little bit into the detail. Can you provide us maybe 2 or 3 years worth of history on the felony arrests and on the guns seized?
Yes. All right. 2022 totals. Again, number that jumps out to me is the 911 guns seized. I believe in 2021, we had 854, so we had more guns seized. And again, this is just Division of Patrol. This doesn't include, the great work that obviously the drug guys do, or the special operations folks who continuously do those sorts of things as well. But this is just for the Division of Patrol. All right, crimes against persons. 12% down in overall homicides, 2022-21, the 66 to 58. Some of our assault numbers are down. Luckily, I think it's a good thing, and I think everybody would agree that our assaults from firearms and knives and things of that nature are down overall, whereas hands, feet, and fists are up. If an assault's going to occur, I guess that we would wish it was that way. And again, when we talk about total numbers, I know that we look at this and we say, okay, well, that's a great thing that at crimes against persons, we were, close to 9% down year to date.
For those who may be watching, that 9% equates out to almost 500 incidents were down across our county.
That's right. But my point is I'm actually going to page past this, the homicide numbers real quick, and we'll come back to it because I wanted to point this out. So when I look at the crimes against property screen, you can see that we are 4% over. So when citizens ask us, well, is your crime up or down? If we're combining persons and property, then we are actually up 3%, 0.3%, I'm sorry, year to date, 22 to 21. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Because people don't normally, they just say, well, what's your crime rate, right? Again, the way that NIBRS breaks it down is between persons and property. But if we look at the overall, we actually were up 0.3%. And look no further than the motor vehicle thefts, which were up 66%, 2,775 for 22. There's the major spike in the crime change overall.
And when you're looking at that 0.3 increase, every incident has the same value, meaning like destruction of property is one incident, homicide is one incident. You're valuing those the same.
Well, we aren't, that's just the way that the state report, yes,
I'm
exactly.
sorry, I didn't mean
But you
to
understand, yes.
attribute it to you, but yes.
Yes. And again, and I'm just taking from the normal average citizen out there that says, hey, is your crime up or down? They may ask specifics. Well, what are your homicides? Which we get all the time, obviously, but when they just say crime up or down, well, are we talking about persons or property? If we're talking about overall, then we're up 0.3%.
Could you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
Before you do that, I have a question
Yep.
on that one. The motor vehicle theft, does that include hijacking
Carjackings would be under robbery with firearm.
under robbery? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
2 slides. Sorry, crimes against persons.
You got it.
So we had roughly 5,000 events there. Can you move to the crimes against property? We had 14,000, so we had a total of 19,000 events, of which 1,100 of those are the increase in motor vehicle thefts.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep. And again, explains that spike. Had it not been for that, clearly we would have been down overall. I'm going to go back here just for a second in case anybody had any questions about total homicides. Again, as I've done, giving you both the sheets. So December, unfortunately, was a violent month for our crimes against persons as far as just investigating homicides. As you can see there, 5 of those in St. Louis County patrol areas and 2 we investigated for municipalities. But then the total homicides, to a more positive note, down overall with an 87 overall clearance rate. Crimes against society, some of these things are down. Again, the drug narcotic violations, something that I kind of want to delve into a little bit more. It's going to take maybe getting with some of the drug analysts on this, but obviously the whole change in marijuana just happened, which is going to drive those even lower. That said, I would assume that the lower number is probably a good assumption, happens to do with the fact that more marijuana arrests were not being made for non-felony amounts, even when it was illegal this past year. The good thing is the driving, if you look at the DWIs, the second from the bottom there, nearly a 40% increase. Kudos to two gentlemen, Officers Bryant and Officer O'Neill, who wrote 257 of those 515 between the two of them. So fantastic work from Highway Safety.
No doubt.
Was that a specific initiative?
They're just really good at their jobs. But yes, they obviously have saturation patrols and things of that nature, but that's specifically what those two are focused on and do a great job with it.
This is an off-the-wall question. I'll apologize, building off of Commissioner Schweren's. Do we have any feel, whether it's St. Louis or nationally, what percentage of people who drive under the influence are actually caught?
It's a good question.
Because
I don't have that.
Kudos that there were 500 that we caught, right?
Right.
Were there 10,000 that we didn't, that put us all at risk? So anyway, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
It was off-the-wall questions.
I mean, I hate to say it, but
Captain, on the homicides, did you have a breakdown for the years on those as well from the 3-year period?
yeah, we can absolutely get that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you had a slide.
No, not
Okay.
for here.
Don't worry about it.
Just
we'll
the
look at it next
22 to 21 comparison,
Gotcha.
but we can go back as far as you'd like for
Yeah.
sure. That's easy for me to get with crimes against persons and get those numbers. Again, just a chart that Abby had put in here, just showing kind of our crime by month in 22. And if you look May through October, all of those months had total crimes over 2,000 over that threshold, with August being the high month. So nothing out of the ordinary, just a chart for.
Same, if you take a line and draw it across each of the bar charts, same type of bell curve year over year, loosely.
Yep.
Peaks in the summer months.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then our maps showing that most crime concentrated, especially this one, the 2022 crime maps concentrated north and south.
For the one on the left, what color dots stand for?
So
Oh, is
the
it- is
blue
it
is the
the
crimes
city?
against persons, the red is crimes against property, and then the crimes against society are the yellow. And then our calls for service, as I look at this, moving averages actually not too far off. Most obviously in December are going to be over a 5-month period down. You can see the first precinct was pretty much right on the number. Jennings up slightly, which again would account for, I told you that there was more total calls for service patrol wide in December than November, but most of them driven by both North County and Jennings. Directed calls for service 22 through 20, or from, I'm sorry, 22 compared to 21. Those totals. So we had 135,398 directed calls for service. This on 22 as compared to 132,069. So that's where I told you the 3,329 is the exact number. More in 22, which is plus 2.5%. Again, which I know I had mentioned earlier when talking about the 2.4% increase in uses of force. And self-initiated, and same thing, curve's going to be down in December. And our self-initiated calls for service down in the first precinct. Again, probably to be expected. I think most of us expected that with 12-hour shifts. The one that kind of, if you look and you might ask about is Jennings, which jumps to
89.
Yeah, 90% difference changed. And so Ally, one of our analysts, had looked into that. And she said that they had 2,000 more business checks, 1,500 more extra patrols, and a little over 600 more traffic stops. So it's not that they weren't doing those things. I think that they're doing a better job of capturing those. So as I kind of looked into it yesterday, for instance, an officer would do on his activity sheet in 2021, he would go to a strip mall, right? And he would physically get out of his car, and I know this because he would put it in his comments, and he would look at 6 different businesses. Well, he was in 2021 capturing that as one business check. Now he's doing a better job of saying, well, I didn't actually check one, I checked 6 different businesses, which again would explain the spike there.
So no change in actual activity, change in the recording of the data.
That's correct.
One last question
Yep.
on those. Can you go back 2 more slides?
Directed?
Yes. So you said there was 130 some thousand total directed calls?
135.
135. And how many citizens do we support?
I have
300?
unincorporated
Yeah.
and our.
And Jennings and the 3 contracts we have, do you have a feel? I'm just trying to get a feel for, is that a percentage of our population? Is that a large percentage, small percentage? Is that?
What is it, 1 million in the county?
Yeah, but we don't necessarily
Right.
get.
I think the last number.
Huh? Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So, and again, going back, I don't know how many of those are repeat callers or things of that nature. I talked to Colonel Lohr this morning and he said, 700,000 calls, sir. And that was for the year. 719,000 calls that just our communication center fields. So a lot of those obviously are people that just have questions. They don't actually need a police officer, but just shows you the volume and the amount that those folks deal with before it even directed calls is just, hey, this meets the criteria. We're dispatching a police officer or multiple police officers to a location.
Yeah, that's like 1.7 per person that we, per citizen, and on our directed calls, that's about 1 call for every little over 3 people. It just seems like very high numbers to me. Sorry. That seems huge, but.
Yeah.
That's 719,000 calls that resulted in 130.
Doesn't mean that calls direct.
But it resulted in 130 directed calls
That's
for our
right.
officers.
Somebody picks up the phone, calls our communications. It may be something that the call taker can answer for them. They don't need a police officer. There's reports that we can take over the phone, stolen license tabs, things of that nature that aren't, a car is not dispatched for. When I talked to him this morning, I thought that number was, it's amazing that the work that those folks do in communications as well.
It's still an intake of information and processing it
Correct.
to some end.
And some callers may get their satisfied answer in 30 seconds, and some it may be, which I know he can attest to this, 25 minutes that you're on the phone with somebody who really doesn't have much of a problem, but needs to vent or talk or things of that nature.
To your point, that's 20% of all the calls end up as some sort of response. Yeah. Excellent.
Yep.
Thanks. Thanks for letting us learn with you. This is intriguing. As our knowledge grows, we ask more questions year end. So thank you for your patience with us.
Yes, sir.
So I have a high level question. As we've
I'm
moved,
not taking high levels.
I'm gonna throw it out anyway.
Not today.
As we're moving to these 12-hour shifts department wide, is there a way to isolate the difference between our old shifts to our new shifts and determine whether it's resulting in more efficiencies or the ability to address more calls or more self-initiated? I know that there's a lot of factors that go into what ends up on the screen, including community activity and community behavior, but is there a way that we can look at the data and pull out trends?
Yeah, so I think that we can look for sure at like officer data, like how many calls for service we have the 1st precinct and the 7th precinct who have been there for a year. But now with the other precincts, it's just going to be as simple as looking, as we start moving into the year, looking at the difference. Let's take South County, for instance, the 4th precinct, looking at maybe how many calls the average officer fielded on a day shift as compared. I don't know that it changes the data much on people picking up the phone, because obviously that doesn't matter much whether you're on an 8, 10, or 12. But we will definitely be looking at those things because that's part of the entire program. And hey, we've made this move to 12. We were looking at some of those things on the pilot, but we'll definitely delve into that as we get throughout the year.
So Captain, I'm going to build on what I think is a very thoughtful question from a proactive standpoint. When we went from 8-hour shifts to 10-hour shifts, and this predates you, right, of course, but perhaps someone in here, what did we measure? The reason for the question is, as we move to 12-hour shifts, can we measure things like response time? Is it equal? Is it more? Is it less?
I
than what
don't
we
know
had
the
at
answer to
10-hour
that
shifts?
yet. I'm sure, I would assume that somebody was measuring it. Yes, those are absolutely things that I know that my folks can measure right now, going from 10s to 12s. I would assume that somebody could measure it back then. I don't know what that data would have shown, but
Yeah, and less from whenever we went from 8 to 10s. Well, interesting, it's probably not relevant now, but moving from 10s to 12s to understand things like response time, right? What do our citizens feel as we've tried to adapt to
A lot of that stuff
less in
was
staffing?
measured from when we went from 8 to 10s, those kind of numbers. Probably a lot of the stuff that he's going to measure this time going from 10 to 12s. Don't think as much was put into the measurements back then as much as we're going to 12s.
Sometime mid-year and then maybe year ends, maybe twice a year, we'd like to understand what response time is year over year.
you got it. Yeah, and again, we would hope, again, reason you go to 12-hour shifts is to cover more beats inside of a precinct. So you would hope, and I try to stress that word, but you would hope that those response times, because if you have more officers on the street, obviously it's should be less time to respond, but we'll definitely take a look at that over time. Thanks. And then our final is the TSR data. I have 2 slides in here for December, and then for the entire, for 22 is the final slide that I have up here now. Again, looking at these things, we really get, and I know not to beat a dead horse, but for the public viewing out there, that we delve into this. In fact, I just yesterday got the year-end TSR numbers as far as broken down for every police officer who would have made a traffic stop. So that's something that myself and the committee will sit down during our final quarter report and go over and see if there's any outliers and things of that nature.
Excellent.
The very bottom line is this other stops. What is that?
So that would be anybody that's not captured in here. So, it could be like tactical operations is not in here, special response. Yeah. So anybody that's not captured on this. Any other questions?
Hundreds, but nothing right now.
Yeah.
You
I've
pique our
got
interest
I've
every
got
time you do
hundreds
this.
too.
They're all high level.
That's right.
So one of the other jobs that he's going to take on, captain of state.
Yes, sir, ma'am. And so obviously we break down strategic plan as far as, I know that you guys had asked about a timeline communications wise. We have the internal release and the external release. So externally, beginning yesterday, so our public information office did a good job of writing a press release and disseminating that to local media outlets. I don't know what type of questions they fielded or anything like that up to this point, if any. Information posted on social media, so our Facebook, Twitter account, Instagram, things of that nature. Also, we put it on Nextdoor, which reaches over 200,000 households in St. Louis County, to direct folks that would be interested that here it is on the website. We'll constantly be updated, things of that nature. All of the precinct captains have completed this past week doing messaging that will be posted on their individual precinct Facebook pages that mention the strategic plan. And those will start, the rollout for those will start next week. I don't know exactly the timeline of what precincts on what days, but the Public Information Office will be releasing all of those. In addition, we've had multiple coordinations with the county executive's office in sharing those social media posts. Doug Moore, who works for Dr. Page, will share all of those and provide any other support as we need it or as we see fit. And then obviously, as you know, that Deputy Chief Ludwig has stood up here and talked to you about the strategic plan on multiple occasions, but as you've probably seen from reading it, there's kind of a mechanism that's built in that will keep those, we hope, and I will say, I shouldn't say hope, that we will keep those open lines of communication with the public. So the messaging via the website and social media. We're also going to do a mid-year survey, so right around the 6-month mark, post another survey to the citizens. Hey, sort of a, in best terms, how are we doing? What else do you want to see in this thing, as this is a living, breathing document that's going to continue to change? So internally, on January 10th, the department was notified that the strategic plan was available to them on Power DMS, which is our housing system for all documents. Deputy Chief Ludwig recently produced a department-wide video that went out to all employees referencing the strategic plan, and just that there's going to be obviously a lot more to follow, that this thing's just getting rolled out, and we're now starting the planning phase is over. We're moving into the actual action phase of this. Yesterday at Executive Command Staff, we had a nice long talk about the strategic plan, and the division commanders will be composing additional committees. So to address the priority action items inside of their divisions. Understand too that there are a lot of action items inside of that document that don't necessarily need a committee. There are things that we can look at that we are already doing or are close to finishing. So it'll be up to the division commanders as well as myself to prioritize those things and sort of give the committees direction on some of these items. They'll be responsible for everything within their division. But that will be on Executive Command Staff. On top of that, we're going to create sort of a hybrid type of committee, which will cross all of the divisions. And then we'll come up with almost a top 5 or a top 10, which will continue to adjust that committee crossing all divisions will specifically focus on. So all of this over hopefully I want to say next week, but in the next 2 weeks, will be communicated to the department on who the members of those committees are. Therefore, should somebody who's not a member of a committee want to have their input, they know who to go to and keep those open lines of communication that obviously will then funnel up into Executive Command Staff.
The comments. Thank you on behalf of all of us for putting this together. Deputy Chief, we'll look at you, even though you bore the brunt of it. We know you led a large group of employees across the department to do so. But we appreciate the direction first and foremost of going to our people first. We think that's, at least I think that's the absolute right way to do it, then to our community, which is also the absolute right thing to do. PIO, thank you very much for all the work you put into it. Captains, thank you for the effort you put into it. As we've said, it's a living, breathing document that will evolve, but it provides us the direction we need over the next 5 years. And the only way to do that is to keep everyone engaged in it. So that's great. Appreciate it. Do all the links that are going out link to the strategic plan? Is there one link to the strategic plan? Where I'm going with the question is, by the end of January, can you provide us with how many hits we've had on that link and what are internal and what are external? Thank you. Thank you. Vera, thank you. We'd like to total, but internal and external, at least for me, would be helpful. How many internal hits on it? Excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. And finally, obviously, as the strategic plan has laid out, I will be providing quarterly reports to the board. It'll be different, but sort of and again, this is going to evolve, but the tracking mechanism will be similar to Teneo and the reporting process for that.
We look forward to seeing all the information, the data that comes off of the website and the feedback that we get through the different sources that we have to accumulate that information.
One potentially last question. Your team, it seems, has a pretty heavy lift this year, both with what you're currently doing with the data and adding on to this strategic plan, tracking and promoting and whatnot, do you have all the resources you need to accomplish all of those goals?
So even if I had no part of this, my team is fantastic. So yes, I think I do, as always. And I have a great executive command staff who's involved as well. Yeah, I think we're good, but give me 4 or 5 months and I'll let you know if we need more, but I think we're good to go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year.
Morning.
So for the staffing report, and I always start out with the authorized commission number of, and it's 971. Of course, that number could change in the near future. A lot of factors with the budget that we've already been talking about, and also with the strategic plan. So we'll be working on that number, and it remains to be seen at this point whether it will be reduced because of the budget or how we're going to deal with it. And so right now we have 89 vacancies. That's up from 80 from last month. And part of that is due to the retirements. We have 17 in the academy right now that started January 2nd. And we did start out with 18. One has withdrawn. And there's a total of 34 recruits right now at the academy. There's 3 open enrollment and 14 municipal officers or recruits along with ours. For professional staff, we have 41 vacancies. That's up 3 from last month. Good news is that the record clerks are fully staffed now, so there's no openings at this time. We do have 12 openings for security and 14 for dispatch. 3 dispatchers graduated December 16th from the Dispatcher Academy. And for the PSD Academy Class 17 that starts at the end of this month, we have right now 3 conditional offers, 7 in background for a total potentially of 10. They generally have a capacity of about 12 in the class. And I know that the recent adjustment in the lateral pay for existing employees in communications has seemed to help out. And I know the folks I talked to are extremely grateful for that adjustment.
Dr. Becker, two areas to discuss. So how many open positions do we have in communications?
14 right now.
And how many open positions do we have in security?
And it's 12 right now. And some of that is due to, I think we had 4 security officers go to the academy in this new class started. And in regard to COVID, we have 1 person out. I think we probably have more people sick from the common flu than we do with COVID. As I always reiterate with military separations, we have 5 right now. That number will probably go up in the summer when they go to their assignments and so forth. And to reiterate, we support reservists and guardsmen as our employees. The applications for December were 33 for police officer and police recruit, and there were 51 NBQs and 23 voluntary withdrawals. So next month, we will present detailed information regarding the statistics from 2022 and a revived recruiting plan. We have in HR 2 new commanders. Well, one's not so new, but Lieutenant Durham is the new commander of the Bureau of Community Engagement, and Lieutenant Shanna Ostendorf is the new commander of Personnel Services. So look forward to collaborating with both of them, and we'll have more information for you next month then.
Congratulations, you two. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Molden, update on Sunshine request status.
The most riveting part of this. Since the inception of Next Request System, the online portal, From October of 2020 to today, January 18th, at about 6:30 this morning, we're sitting at 41,000 requests. Put it in perspective, all my great clerks that are down there that are doing all these jobs, we've closed 39,632 as of today. Open request, when I say open, the way the system works is it also includes any new requests that are coming in, the pending requests, which would mean pending as in we're waiting for a response for the requester to answer or waiting for payment. And then due soon and overdues are all included in the open. And we're currently sitting at 1,438. So we got 271 new requests that just came in. And we roughly have about 1,150 requests that are still just pending. So we're waiting on responses or what have you. So I also did a quick update on, since the inception of every year, what our numbers look like. And it looks like we have increased about 1,000 requests since every year. So that's where we're standing.
Let's go to the other end of that. So the number of requests proportionately to where we were last year before the implementation of the software that are open. We have a feel for that. In other words, has the software done what we needed it to do, which is provide?
Yes, turnaround has been quicker. Probably late fall of last year, we went to online payments finally. So turnaround there has been a little bit quicker. People are starting to understand that they can use that portal to actually make payments. And then we immediately release the documents. So it's a little bit faster, yes.
Excellent. We, the board did receive, it may have been at 6:31 today, the board did receive a note from someone who alleges that they haven't received their information that they've requested. So we'll forward it on to you for resolution.
If you could, please.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, you said this was the most important stuff, but we probably have 30 or 40 questions around this. Perfect. It is important.
It
stuff.
was
Please don't
riveting.
take- Yeah, please do not take that. It's important,
No,
or we
it's
wouldn't
all
have
good.
asked you to come up and talk about it, right? We wanted to understand how we're doing in response
Yes.
to our citizenry.
Yes, appreciate it.
With respect to the resources your team has, I'm talking about number of people and how effective the software is. Are you comfortable with the
I
number?
don't think you're ever really comfortable.
Okay.
Would I be lying if I didn't ask for more people? Yeah, I would love to have a couple more people to dedicate themselves to it, but I know there's budget crunches and what have you, so we're managing with what we currently have.
That's not a good question to ask the commander.
Sidebar?
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I imagine nobody is comfortable. Like if you imagine you're in a swimming pool, I'm sure nobody's like lounging on a raft right now. Everybody's treading water. But are you keeping your head above water? Or do you have 50-pound weights on your feet? And is
good
that
question.
also not a fair question to ask? It might not be. I don't.
Oh,
I'm not
Sounds like an
going
attorney.
farther into that analogy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a sense of,
Are we overwhelmed? Yes, they are.
Okay.
All the clerks are overwhelmed because don't forget that we are still open to the public and taking care of business with security license, concealed carry, fingerprinting, background checks, which take time. So you're also now taking time from the clerks at the windows instead of doing sunshine requests at one point. So when they're slow or there's not so many people in the lobby, we have certain things in place that we take people outside of that and they work on their requests. So we're still trying to manage. And as you know, that's always changing and evolving with what we can do and what we can't do. And I'll be honest, Lieutenant Colonel Lohr and myself and the county counselors are actually always trying to work to improve the functionality of everything down there, along with training. We're always in training, trying to update the sunshine law itself, just because it's so vague. So it's an evolving process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all. Board business continuing, approval of minutes from our meeting on December 7th, 2022.
I move the approval of the December 7th, 2022 minutes.
I second that motion.
Any further conversation on those minutes? Any corrections that we've noted to date? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving to letters of communication. Do we have any incoming communications?
No, sir.
Do we have any outgoing communications? Very good. Any old business? That is not a reference to me. Just to make sure you understand that. New business?
If I-
Yes, sir.
I want to say something about the gym, okay.
I would love for you to.
Okay.
Did you up earlier?
Okay, under new business, I would just like to say everyone knows Monday was Martin Luther King birthday, holiday. And one of the many celebrations going on was at the old courthouse from the statewide MLK committee. We were had very significant representation at the old courthouse in the rain on Monday morning. The chief was there. Lieutenant Colonel Cox, several officers were there. The new chief from the city was there. I had a chance to chit chat with him. In addition to that, they had their motorcade, and I think we had, what do we have, 3 or 4 cars, Colonel, in the motorcade. And then it was capped off with, there was a non-denominational service that they had at the Sun Theater, and our own Chief Gregory was given an award for the Drum Major Justice Award, Drum Major for Justice Award, and made some remarkable comments and was very well received. So I wanted to congratulate Chief Gregory for his accomplishment. And as I told him, he said, I've been here in this position now for almost 2 years. And I said, well, this is a body of work award, 43 years from working for justice on the inside is what I told him when we introduced him, when he received his award. So congratulations to our chief. That's it.
Commissioner Banks, thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Cox, thank you for your leadership in this and for all those participate, as we said earlier, whether it was physically or in thought. We appreciate all that. Thank you. Board priorities for 2023. If you recall, last year we put together some board priorities. We committed to updating those at least annually. So the board has provided a first draft to each other. Actually, I guess it was sent out, and we're here to have the conversation on board priorities for 2023 based off of what we believe we need to do. So we're just going to open up the document and the floor to communication around that. If I may, so as I do that, there are 5 priorities. They are similar to last year. Continue to address the opportunities for improvement within the department. Continue to expand the integrative crime prevention, criminal justice, and public safety across the entire community. Acquire the funding and investment needed to ensure the St. Louis County Police Department remains a leading respected first-class organization. Our role with the chief on the overall direction and of the department and on implementation of the strategic plan, and to continue to develop ourselves into a strategic leadership team. So at a high level, those are the 5 that are out there. There's a lot of detail behind those that this group's going to work through. So with that, I'll open it up to the table.
I think keeping those priorities is in line with where we're going. I think the fact that we're keeping our priority, if we decide to keep those priorities the same, I don't think that is an indication that we've not accomplished them, just that we continue to recognize their importance and significance.
Right, that we stay the course. It's not that we're stagnant, but we're staying on that course. I would agree.
On the things that are important from our perspective to the community and to the department.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps the most significant addition is the inclusion of the strategic plan, knowing that this is the first year of a 5-year plan. So progressing over 5 years, not getting it all done in the first year, to make sure that we build on what we've accomplished and continue to assess where we're headed. Commissioner Hassler, you had one request on the 4th one of our relationship with the chief.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull this up.
Sure. The current language is, she's pulling it up, says lead, support, and collaborate with the chief and the department in our role as a civilian oversight, aligned with the above and with the strategic plan. So that's the existing, that's proposed language.
Right. And my objection was to the wording, one word, lead. We discussed that, I think, in the past, and I thought that we had changed that terminology.
I think we had lead and manage. So the language is, at least other than the strategic plan, the language is identical to last year. We had lead and manage, and you wanted to take the word manage out. So that's how we arrived at lead.
I think that's the compromise we took out. Manage.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other words? My issue is, well, we took care of the one with the word manage. But as I looked at it again, because I can say I haven't looked at it until recently, that somehow, I guess, some way to phrase it, that we support the leadership of the chief, or we partner the leadership of the chief.
So the first,
It's in my mind, the implication is that we're leading the chief and we're not leading him as much as supporting and collaborating with him. At least that's my perspective. And so just a thought, it doesn't have to, my hair's not burning, I'm not on fire about it, but I think that as long as we're reviewing year by year, that's fine, but I would not like for that language to be memorialized and someone else come along after us and assume something different than what we intended.
so I think I'm interpreting the support and collaborate you're okay with. It is still the word lead.
Yeah.
How would you, since the chief is responsible to this board, how do we?
You mean responsible to the board?
Correct.
Yes, I think
So,
you
so
should-
how-
Go ahead.
responsible to the board.
Yeah.
So what word would you choose if he's responsible to us other than lead, which means that he gets guidance from us, but it's his job to run the department, right? That was the
Right.
discussion we had over manage. So we arrived at lead because legally and through the ordinance and the charter, he's responsible to us.
Right. But we're not leading him in that. We are aware, for meetings like today, we are aware of all that goes on in the department, as well as our other varied interests in the work of the department.
I'm
And
not
then
sure
maybe it's
that's, I'm
just
not
me.
sure that's accurate.
What do
If
you
the
mean?
board says we want this to happen and we tell the chief that that's what needs to happen, the chief's part of the ordinance, part of the charter is that the chief makes that happen. I mean, not that we do that, right? And maybe no board's done that, but
Give
that's,
me an example of what you mean.
I don't know that I have one right off the top of my head. I could probably come up with several hypotheticals. We have one right now on a piece of property. If the board said, you know what, we want a building that has X, Y, and Z in it as opposed to just X,
Mhm.
chief would have to figure out a way to execute on a building that has X, Y, and Z in it as opposed to just X. Or
But
that's just an example. right?
Okay, and so following that example, he would then provide us with information about this theoretical building and what's needed in the building. And we're saying, okay, we want you to just go forward with this. The kind of thing you're talking about? Okay, and I buy that. Maybe it's just me, but Lee just almost feels like I've got a leash around him and leading him around.
So that was your argument last year for manage.
Yep.
So what word do we use, Thomasina? What are you going to get comfortable with?
I guess what I said, something about something in terms of supporting his leadership.
Got that.
But that's there already. Support is the second word.
I can't pull this up just yet because we didn't have it here on here and I did print it out.
I'm not advocating for this word because I haven't thought through it, but what about guide? Is that different than lead?
Yes. Yes.
What does the ordinance say? Or what does the charter say?
Which one is this one you said it already says? The one he was saying, it's already says. Elaborate.
Stronger in the ordinance.
Hmm?
Stronger in the ordinance. I think you're right.
Anybody who's faster to pull it up, please do.
Pull up my computer.
So the charter says the board shall have the following powers and duties: to formulate policy, to appoint to appoint as superintendent of police, to hear determined appeals, formulate standards of observance, promulgate manuals of rules and regulations, hear and determine appeals from citizens, regulate licensed private watchmen. The Board of Police, start out with the first one. Sorry, I went down into the powers and duties. The very first one is the Board of Police Commissioners shall be in charge of the police department. Sorry, in charge of the Department of Police.
That's what it says.
Oh, I'm stuck.
Okay.
I think we're still trying to figure out what word's going to make you comfortable. I don't know that we'll agree or disagree. We don't have anything to build off of.
I mean, I'd feel a lot better about guide.
I'm not comfortable with guide.
Okay.
The
Why?
charter says that it's our job. I think guiding is not.
It doesn't say our job is to lead. It doesn't say our job is to lead. Say that.
You're in charge.
No, but it says,
It says in charge of the police department.
so I'm not sure how that gets into guide. The Board of Police Commissioners shall be in charge of the Department of Police.
It's fine. I mean, it's up to interpretation. I mean, the interpretation is what disturbs me about it.
So what's the interpretative piece?
That what I just said, that lead just sounds to me like you're leading puppy around.
Would you be more comfortable with the word manage then?
That we took it.
So how does this work? Are we managing the chief's moves? Are we managing his every move? Are we telling him what to do day by day, moment by moment?
No.
Right. We're not doing that. We chose him in order to support his leadership, to collaborate with him on new ideas and new structures. Now, if he goes south on us, then that's a whole nother story. That's another conversation.
So let's just play that one then. Let's assume he does go south. Nothing personal, Chief. You know that, right? Let's assume he does go south. Are we going to guide him or are we going to make decisions?
We're going to have to decide how to handle that. And I would say that Commissioner Schwerin and I have walked that path a couple of times. And so it would not be an immediate, well, we're going to slap your hands and the next time you hit the door. It's not that. It's a process.
So ultimately, whose decision it is if the chief goes
It
south?
would be our decision. If he is out of order, then it's our decision to say, get it together or get out. Not in those terms.
Okay, and so what word goes along with that function?
Is that leading? That's evaluating. That's evaluating his performance.
And so
But when I
what word
say-
goes along with the behaviors that we would have to do? We're pointing at this chief. It could be any chief, right? This
Right.
is about a board
Right.
and a chief, not this board and this chief.
Right. Right, that's the point. It's not about this particular, it's about how we memorialize our wording. So that it's interpreted in a way that does not indicate that he can't make a move without us. because he can. We're expecting him to come back and report or to, beforehand or afterwards. But I don't see that as leading him. I see that as, or her. I see that as following the, to somebody following the charter. But the charter is a broad document, and we are to implement that in ways that we have by producing a document, a priorities document.
Not sure quite. Go ahead.
What I'm hearing is a concern of a lack of distinction between high-level priorities and day-to-day operations. I mean, if our job as the board is to provide high-level guidance, and it is the chief and executive command staff's decision or how they work together to figure out, given this guidance, here's how we're going to run this department. And those decisions are their decisions. Maybe it's a matter of defining at what level we're leading.
So let me read I stopped at the first section of the county charter, which is section 4.270. Next section, 4.275, superintendent of police shall be, quote, be responsible to the board for the operation of the department of the police and all personnel thereof, ... There's another a sentence that goes along with that. So I guess if we were rewriting the charter, I would agree with you. These are nothing but priorities, right? Our priority is to work with the chief, to lead him, would supervise work better?
Work
think-
with him, you just said.
Well, I'm trying to get to a point where sounds like it's probably more you and I can agree on a word. I'm pretty comfortable with lead. That is not dragging someone around by a leash. Lead says we provide him direction, and what he does with that direction is his portion of what the charter says. Manage sounds a little more operational. Supervising is certainly operational, and I don't think any of us want to be supervising the chief. At times, we may have to manage him depending on whether he goes south or not. So unless we can come up with a better word, I'm not sure what other word comes along with the role that we've said that we need to do as it aligns to what the charter says our responsibilities are. And the charter will be around a lot longer than I think any of us will be around serving in the board. So that's all it was intended to do. My direct comment would be, I think we're way overthinking this word. It's just a set of priorities.
I think we are too.
You mean you think I am? Don't say we. I mean, we can.
We're together, we're a board.
Yeah, we are together. We're a board. Let me look. I would agree that lead is much better than manage. But I don't know.
May I suggest that we table this for just a few minutes? We can think about it and come back to it.
And absolutely, and we can come back to it next month. We just committed to getting back once a year, so starting of the year seemed a good approach to it.
I'm not saying this entire thing, I'm just saying this particular bullet point.
I agree. I think that's a good move.
Process it.
Let's,
Okay.
We can talk about other
yes,
other areas or of concern. Does anybody else have?
let's table that until I agree.
Tabled?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, consider it tabled for now. Thank you for the idea. We have, moving to the second item under new business, we have 12 contracts. All 12 of them are related to the CMPA. I would suggest that we vote on those in two sets of 6, just for simplicity. Or at least informational. Is that acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Very good. Then the first of the 6, again, these are all for CMPA, so we will leave those words out of all of the readings. But the first contract is a professional service agreement with Training Force USA LLC. It's a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Leadership Coaching Skills for First Line Supervisors on March 16th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $4,000. The second contract is a professional service agreement with Professional Law Enforcement LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Advanced Search and Seizure on March 7th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,350. The third contract is a professional service agreement, also with Professional Law Enforcement LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Drafting the Bulletproof Affidavit on March 8th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,350. The fourth is also a professional service agreement with Stephen Gerard Mollering Jr. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Combatant Tactics and Self-Defense for Law Enforcement on December 9th and December 10th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $4,800. The fifth is a professional service agreement with TriTech Forensics, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Investigative Analysis and Crime Scene Reconstruction on from March 13th through March 17th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $9,605. And the sixth contract that we'll vote on is a professional service agreement with Donald J. Van Meter and Associates, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Applied Leadership Principles on March 13th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $2,900. May we have a motion to approve these six contracts for the CMPA?
I move that we approve these contracts for the CMPA.
May we have a second?
I second that motion.
Any further conversation on these six contracts? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Those six are approved. Moving to the next six, the next is a professional service agreement also with Donald J. Van Meter and Associates for a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled First Line Supervision on March 22nd, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $2,900. The second of this batch is a professional service agreement with the Highway Interdiction Training Specialist, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Advanced Roadside Interview Techniques for Police Officers on March 20th and 21st, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $6,000. The next is a professional service agreement with Public Grants and Training Initiatives. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Mastering Street Interviews on March 23rd, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The next is a professional service agreement with Public Grants and Training Initiatives. It is a new contract with an instructor to teach a program entitled My CI on March 24th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The second to last is a professional service agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Domestic Violence Response and Investigation on March 27th and 28th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $2,000. And the last is a professional service agreement with Patrick E. Horeen. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled First Line Supervision on March 27th through March 31st, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $1,700. May we have a motion to approve these second six contracts for the CMPA?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We have 12 contracts approved for the CMPA. Thank you. Anything from a public forum?
No.
Very good. In that case, yes, ma'am. You can live with lead. Okay. Thank you. All right. We'll come back to that then. So priorities for, as written, we'll take a look at them, maybe truly finalize them next month, just to give a little more time to read through any worded, any verbiage, or we have some right now. So thank you. We'll update it based on the feedback, and get it out for next month's meeting, and we will take one last review of it and approve it then. Very
So
good.
it will
Great.
move to old business on our February agenda.
Okay, thank you. We'll update that and send it out. Thank you, Thomasina. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Richard. Nothing from the public forum, so we will move to a motion to hold closed meeting. The Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into closed meeting for legal advice and review of claims and lawsuits involving the police departments, Section 610-0211 of RSMO and Section 114-020.11 SLCRO, and the discussion of employee and personnel matters, Section 610.0213 and 13 RSMO, and Sections 114-020.1, 3, and 13 SLCRO. May we have such a motion to move to closed session?
I move that we could move to closed session.
Second that motion.
Any further conversation on a motion to go to closed meeting? Amy, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ashworth,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Schwerin.
Yes.
Thank you. We are moving to closed session. To those of you who will not be with us when we reconvene, have a very good 2023. Be safe out there and have your people be safe too. Thank you all.